Hello, everyone. This is Ezekiel Trezevant, Las Vegas Raiders co-beat writer, Las Vegas Raiders on SI co-beat writer Ezekiel Trezevant. First and foremost, as always, thank you for joining me. And boy, do we have a lot of things to talk about today, heading into Week 5, obviously against the Indianapolis Colts on the road. Huge game that the Raiders face. So let's get right into it. But as always, I'm huge and I'm big on going over what has happened in the week leading up to this game, into the weekly games and the previous game itself, and obviously going back to the Bears game, week 4. Guys, it was tough. It was tough to watch. It was tough to watch it go down the way it did. I know everyone is different. Me personally, if I'm going to lose a game, I would rather lose by 50. Just beat me, please. Just beat me. If I lose on the last second play, I lose by one. I mean, you start to kind of break down the plays that could have went your way, that could have swung the entire game. And when you lose by 1 point in a football game, it literally does come down to one play here and there. And it's not hard to see what those plays were for the Raiders on Sunday. Unfortunately, Gino threw 3 interceptions. When you lose by 1 point, when you lose by less than a field goal, or you lose by one possession or less, and you throw 3 interceptions, it's hard not to look back at those interceptions and wonder what could have been had you had those extra possessions. But that's something else that we'll talk about a little bit later. But just kind of just to start things off, there's no dancing around it, guys. There's no dancing around it. These guys are 1-3. That's differently than what I think most of us would have expected, especially because they could have beaten the Chicago Bears and been 2-2. So I think to kind of see them at 1-3 is a little bit surprising. But at the same time, that's the NFL, right? One mistake here, one mistake there can be the difference between being 1-3 or being 4-0 or 2-2, whatever it may be. So let's start with the good. I told you a moment ago, when competing, I don't want to lose by one. I want to lose by 50. And I think that kind of permeates the entire conversation with what happened with the Raiders last Sunday. When the season's early, you kind of have a little bit of leeway to make things, to kind of see the glass half full, if you will. And I generally see things half full. But guys, if you know the Raiders well enough, there are certain things that it's just flat out hard to see the glass half full on. Most notably, coming off of the Chicago Bears game, the loss of Colton Miller. That's huge. That is huge. And the Raiders coaching staff and the guys in the locker room, they will say all the right things and next man up and all of those good things. But how do you make up for losing Colton Miller for at least 4 weeks, if not longer, because of the injury that he has? Guys, I don't have the words to sit here and try to make it seem better than it is. That is, outside of Max getting hurt, outside of Gino getting hurt, and obviously Brock Bowers, which he's already hurt. You can't really name too many more people that the Raiders could not afford to lose more than Colton Miller. I'm sure Stone Forsythe might be okay. He might be decent, but we won't know that until they take the field against the Colts and see what that looks like. But that's, we'll come back to that in a minute as well. Back to Colton, just in general. I mean, you look across the league, Colton has to be, I would imagine, top 10, top 15 left tackles in the National Football League. As of last season, multiple publications, respected publications, across the country ranked him as, I believe if I'm not mistaken, he was the 15th overall pick. I think he was ranked as one of the top 15 overall picks in the last decade. Colton Miller was, and that was as of last offseason and the offseason before that. So not too far away in terms of when he received that recognition. Losing a top 10, 15 offensive tackle, left tackle at that. There's no positive that comes from that. As positive as a person as I am, I can't make that positive. Losing Colton Miller is huge. And again, coaches are going to say next man up. They're going to say, they have the utmost confidence, but to a certain degree, that's what they're supposed to say. The fact of the matter is that no team wants to replace a top 10 to 15 left tackle week 5 into the season, especially the Raiders, who frankly were not equipped in terms of offensive linemen on the second string. They're not equipped to handle that loss, a loss the size of Colton Miller. They're just not equipped, and that's not me. I mean, check the preseason tape. It's out there what happened when the second string offensive line got put into the game. It led to Aiden O'Connell messing his wrist up, right? That was with the second string offensive line. The offensive line across the board on that second string, it became such an issue that we in the media room flat out asked Pete over training camp, asked, I believe, Chip a time or two about that second string offensive line. And it was such a glaring need in terms of the reserve offensive lineman that there was no need to dance around the question. There was no need to ask the question a certain kind of way because the line behind the starters, that second string offensive line was noticeably, there was a drop off between the first and second string. And, this is not ideal. I don't know how else to say it. It's not ideal for them to have to go to any of really their reserve offensive linemen, let alone to replace Colton Miller. I mean, that's your best offensive lineman. So you have Colton out for a couple of weeks. Obviously, JPJ is back in. He looked like himself against the Bears. We'll come back to JPJ in a minute, but you got to think you now have lost Colton. Brock's not healthy. You've suffered an injury to JPJ. This is all worst case scenario. You go down the line, just you can't name more than a handful of things that can go worse for the Raiders than them losing Colton Miller, JPJ suffering an injury, and within the first 2 games of the season, 3 weeks of the season, and Brock Bowers suffering a knee injury in the very first game of the season. You can't really draw it up any worse than that. So let's be honest about the situation. It's tough, and not just tough. If you ask me, this outside again of Geno getting hurt, which is he's the quarterback, outside of Max getting hurt, losing Colton Miller, that's one of the top 3 worst case scenarios for this team. Whether or not he'll make it back for the end of the season, whatever it may be, I I don't know how likely that is, right? And if things don't go well, how much sense does it make to bring him back if the record does not look good whenever he's ready to come back? So this might be a season-ending injury, either officially or unofficially, but time will tell. And a lot of this is leading to the next subject of, again, Stone Forsythe. They're expected to, give him a lot of run against Indy, but at the end of the day, nobody really knows what to expect from Stone. He was somewhat of a later addition after Aiden got hurt. The Raiders cut Thayer. They cut Thayer Munford, and obviously Stone was who they replaced him with. So that was the Arizona Cardinals preseason game. So I think that was preseason game 2 or 3. So he came in kind of late. Now he has a lot of history with Pete from their time in Seattle. Pete has confidence in the guys that he has experience with, but we don't know what that looks like underneath Chip Kelly. We don't know what that looks like with these teammates that he has. We have no idea. But to that point, neither does Indianapolis. So maybe it works out. Maybe the unknown helps the Raiders out. And I wouldn't think that's too crazy of an assumption because of things that Pete Carroll has said, that he said leading up to the regular season in terms of those first 4 or 5, 6 games of the season. Those teams don't really know what to expect from the Raiders. Pete and his coaching staff wanted to use the unknown to their advantage. I think that might be about the only positive that you can pull from Colton Miller being out and Stone Forsythe being put in, is that there's a lot of unknown. Other teams may not know what to expect, but at the end of the day, they're going to find out really quickly, when they start dialing up the pressure, right? Left tackle, if you're not good at left tackle, it's going to stand out, and it's going to stand out quickly. So hopefully Stone Forsythe does his thing. Hopefully he plays well. The Raiders offense is depending on it. I think that's kind of one of the disappointing factors besides the fact that Colton is just not there. It's disappointing to not have him there, but for him to get hurt and to lose him right after the offensive line seemingly kind of figured things out, kind of opening up those lanes for the ground game and, protecting Geno as well as they did against the Bears, for them to kind of make those strides and then lose your best offensive lineman, that hurts no matter how you dress it up. But hey, it's the NFL. This is part of the gig, right? You have to do well with what you have. You have to do well even with injuries. Everybody's banged up on one level or another. The significance of the injuries that each team has, that varies, but everybody's banged up to a little bit of a degree, especially along the offensive and defensive line. So, look, man, the Raiders have to figure it out. It's going to be interesting to see what they do, but they have to figure it out, especially on the offensive line. So, we talked about Colton there. Let's go to the next elephant in the room, if you will. JPJ. I've said for the last couple of weeks, and it's not groundbreaking by any means, but we've all noticed that they look different. And when I say they, I mean the offensive line specifically. They look different with JPJ out there. You have to give Jackson his due. He looked like a man possessed out there against the Bears, finishing plays, physical, and kind of setting that tone that you want along the offensive line. Now, that brings in a whole lot of things we're talking about in terms of JPJ. And after Chip Kelly's presser this week, the cat is out the bag. There's no more hiding that there is something going on between Jackson Powers and the coaching staff. I mean, somewhat unprompted, Chip Kelly flat out says, and you can go look at it word for word. Chip Kelly says Jackson has a big head. That's from your offensive coordinator. I think that kind of lets you know that there is something going on that might be a little bit bigger than football. That would explain why he was quote unquote competing in training camp. That would explain why Pete, as recently as a week or two ago, said that JPJ would be competing when it doesn't really seem like there's much of a competition. I think with Chip Kelly's words in terms of JPJ, according to Chip having a big head, there is something more than just X's and O's going on with JPJ. And this is not, we're not speculating at this point. Chip saying what he said, the way he said it, takes any kind of veil off of what's going on. Something is going on. It's worth talking about, and it's bigger than football. Maybe the fact, in terms of it's being bigger than football, maybe the it that is bigger than football is the coaching staff feels like Jackson has a big head. I didn't say it. Chip Kelly said it straight from his mouth. Maybe that's what's going on, and maybe there's some humbling that the coaching staff is trying to instill in the young man. But I think from a pure X's and O's point, to say that there's a competition between Jackson at guard and really anywhere anyone behind him, who's competing with Jackson? What guard do they have that's going to beat out Jackson at guard? I don't think they have one. The next part of the conversation is the switch from guard to center between Jackson and Meredith, Jordan Meredith. Huge, 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 huge topic of the conversation. Rightfully so. I see both sides. Last year, when after Jackson got moved to center, there was an improvement in play along the offensive line. Now, different coaching staff, different scheme, a lot of differences there. Don't get me wrong, but they got better with Jackson playing his natural position. I would also point out again, if you listen to what these guys are saying over the offseason, I believe it was JPJ himself mentioned that he traveled, I want to say to Florida. Don't quote me on that, but I think he said down to Florida with Gino to practice as his center, only to line up as offensive guard in training camp. Something happened between Jackson working out with Gino in training camp that got a position switch. What it is, I'm not sure. I don't think a lot of people are sure, but it's something. And at this point, you start to kind of connect the dots between the quote unquote competition that Jackson has been in. You go back to, I believe it was week 3. It was a short week. The Commanders, I want to say it was the Commanders game, if I'm not mistaken. It was a short week because they had just played on Monday Night Football. But you needed Jackson out there. You needed Jackson out there to have any kind of a chance, and he didn't play. If I'm not mistaken, I'm not sure that he played at all. I could be wrong, but I'm not sure that Jackson played at all. He definitely didn't start against the Commanders. And you kind of start to peel back the layers, and you start to say, well, why didn't he play? Or why didn't he play as much as he should have, considering the struggles? Now, short week, I get it, but I mean, these guys are professionals, right? If for Pete to say all week that Jackson was a go heading into that game, that Washington game, and then he doesn't go, or doesn't go as much as we thought he probably should have, kind of raises some flags that there's some things going on. You kind of hope that they figure it out because they need Jackson out there. Win, lose, or draw, they need Jackson out there, especially with Colton Miller not being out there anymore. There's no more time for games. There's no more time for politics, whatever it may be. Wherever side of the equation you fall on in terms of JPJ and the coaching staff, they need him out there. That's all, that's all that matters. That's all that matters. I don't think you can say that you are trying to win. This team can say that they're trying to win if Jackson Powers Johnson is not on the field. I think, and I say that very respectfully, but I think it's actual factuals, as a lot of my friends would say, if you will. So there's that. You gotta get Jackson on the field and get the most out of him. Keep him engaged. You see what he brings to the table. Now, if we're being honest, the flip side of sometimes Jackson can get a little worked up. He can make some boneheaded plays every once in a while, boneheaded penalties. I want to say against New England, he had an unnecessary roughness call, if I'm not mistaken, and it was bad. There's no way to sugarcoat that penalty. It was bad. But I would rather have a offensive lineman. I would rather have a football player that I can say, hey, relax. than to try to have to coach him up. And that's why I think a lot of us, we like Jackson. We like the energy he brings. And I don't think I'm speaking for just myself. You like that energy he brings you. It's hard to root against him. Okay, so we talked about Colton. That's not necessarily the best situation. We talked about JPJ. That's an improving situation, you hope, between Jackson and the coaching staff, whatever's going on. And then in terms of, things that have to get figured out, Geno. Yeah, Geno. I listen. We all root for Geno. No, nobody's rooting against Geno. Uh, and we've all seen. I think the Raiders have had, if I'm not mistaken, I think Geno makes the sixth, either the fifth or the sixth quarterback that the Raiders have started over the past 2+ seasons. So this season and then the 2 seasons prior to that, I believe Geno was the sixth. So you had Hoyer, you had Garoppolo, you had Aiden, you had Ritter, and then obviously you have Geno himself. So you go down the line of just the amount of quarterbacks that they had. It's not necessarily all on Geno, right? There's some things that have been going on well before Geno got here. But the fact of the matter is that Geno is the guy now. He's the quarterback now. So this does fall on his shoulders. He knows that. He's talked about it freely. After the last game, he's talked about it. He stood in front of the podium, every week, right, and owned it, which is something that we all respect. He's owned it. He knows it's on him. He's not running from it. I've seen Geno have very legitimate excuses for what's going on. I've offered him a very legitimate excuse for what's going on, and he won't take it. Specifically, the Chargers game, when the snaps, he was getting snaps left, right, up, down, everywhere in the middle. They weren't consistent snaps. I said, hey, Geno, are those impacting you? The answer is clearly yes, but he still refused to throw his guys under the bus, even when it wasn't necessarily throwing them under the bus. It's just the fact of the matter. No quarterback can get snaps all over the field and still be productive, trying to figure out how to beat a defense. And he still took, responsibility for everything that was going on. It's admirable. We all respect it. But at the same time, it has to be fixed. There's only so many 3 interception games or 2 interception games that you can have without serious questions coming your way. And that's for any quarterback, that's for any team. So I do think we're getting to that point where, a couple of more games, those questions for Geno are going to be more and they're going to be tougher. But at the same time, that comes with being the quarterback, the head guy, if you will. I mean, they're paying Geno $90 million, roughly, upwards of $90 million, if I'm not mistaken. That comes with some responsibility. And part of that is owning it when it's your fault. And again, this is not to harp on Geno. Put any quarterback in there. Any quarterback that throws 3 interceptions twice, 2 different times in 3 games, there's going to be some questions asked. And I think Geno knows that. He expects it. He's okay with it. But the other half of those questions is improvement in play. Everybody wants to see Geno succeed. Everybody, believes in him. We watched him all training camp. It's there. But he has to go out and do it. Now, I think a lot of people are forgetting that's where the injury to, Brock Bowers is not himself. I don't care what the coaching staff says. No defensive coordinator in the NFL believes that Brock Bowers is anything close to healthy. Okay, so you got to play with an unhealthy Brock Bowers. You're playing with, again, an injured JPJ. He's back to full strength now. You're playing with a injured Colton. Those all impact the quarterback. Everything that your star players aren't there, your starting offensive lineman is hurt, whatever, all those little bitty things that seem small are huge when it comes to the quarterback because they depend on so many other things for their success. They depend on a good offensive line blocking for them. They depend on the receivers getting open, making the catches, etc. They depend on the running back doing their job. The quarterback depends on more people than just about any other position on the field, especially on offense. He needs help. And in many ways, I'm not sure that the Raiders are equipped to give that to him just based off the roster. Now, again, most of this, there's no running from it. It's on Geno. Geno has to figure out what's going on that's leading to this. I mean, you got to think 2 separate times in 3 weeks, you throw 3 interceptions. That's not a happenstance. That's not by accident. There is something you're doing or not doing that is leading to this. Now, Geno knows that. I know he knows that. What it is that he is or is not doing, I don't know. I'm not an offensive coordinator, but at the same time, it's something. There's something that they are doing that opposing defenses are figuring out or have figured out, and all they're doing is they're disguising it a little bit differently. Now, again, what those things are that the defenses are doing, I'm not sure. That's up to Chip Kelly to figure out, and that's up to Geno Smith to figure out how to beat it. I will also say with Geno, I think some of this is trying too hard, which I don't see anything wrong with that. He wants to be successful. He wants it that badly to where maybe he's trying a little bit too hard. But at the same time, I do think that maybe he's trying to overcompensate for the weaknesses that he feels or that are apparent on the Raiders offense. And he does not need to do that. I know he feels the need to do that. It's admirable that he wants to do that, but he's got to let the game flow to him. I do think week one, he let the game flow to him, even with the interception, even with the rain, even everything that happened, he let the game flow to him. And I think that's the difference between the one win and the three losses. One win, he let it come to him. Three losses, he's forcing it. Now, it's debatable, and Pete might say he is or is not forcing it, but some of those interceptions are pure just forcing, right? You're trying a little too hard. Now, I also think being under duress, which he has been most of this season, plays into it as well. There's only so many times your quarterback can be in duress for 2, 3, 4 quarters in a row and it not add up on him, and add up on his and impact his decision making. Geno Smith is human. These guys are human. You can only be running from 300-pound linemen for 60 minutes so many times before it starts to impact your brain, your performance, and everything else. So, as much as I possibly can, not being a professional athlete, I understand where Geno's coming from. But at the same time, he is a professional athlete. So we need him to improve. But again, there is a lot of corrections that can be made, and they're working hard to make it. That's one thing I can really tell you that I've felt from that's I don't want to say it's different, but I can feel more so this season than the last couple of seasons is that those guys they want it a be it's a genuine effort to be better and to show improvement. And I think that's why when you lose by one, it hurts the way that those guys hurt, right? And I do use the word hurt for a reason because when I walked into the locker room after that, it wasn't an anger feeling that you felt in there. It felt like like the guys just felt like they let one get away, right? That they felt like they should have won that game. So it's going to be interesting to see where they go from here. But Geno absolutely has to figure things out, and it's there for him to figure out. But they have to scheme it. They don't have the roster that's just going to go and beat people, every weekend and week out. They have to scheme it, especially on offense. They have to scheme it. Now, we've talked enough about the offense. I'm sorry to go on and on about that, but the defense has been stellar. There's really not much to harp on when it comes to the defense. They really just need the defense to continue doing what they're doing. They need the defense to get off the field on third down. They've been decent at getting to third down, excuse me. They now have to get off the field on third down. I think if they do that, they'll be fine. Raiders defense, I believe they ranked 13th in the NFL against the run. That's going to be their calling card. And I've said it all, I say it week in and week out. They are really, really good against the run. I say they're 13th against the run, minus that Washington game. If that Washington game didn't go the way it did for Washington's running backs in their ground game, the Raiders would probably be top 10 against the run. Just check the numbers. They gave up 200 yards to the Commanders. The other 3 games of the season, I don't believe the Raiders gave up over 100, and they gave up 200 to the Commanders. So kind of keep that in mind. These guys are really good against the run, but they have to focus. I think that Commanders game, out of the 200 yards that they gave up, 3 runs accounted for 100 of the yards. They were just giving up chunk yards. I think they gave up a 60-yard run, a 20-yard run, and like a 17-yard run or something, along that. But I think 96 yards of the 200 yards the Commanders ran for were on about 3 different plays. So you eliminate those 3 plays, the Raiders are top 10, or a lot closer to top 10 against the run. So that's their calling card, so much so, and I can't stress it enough. If they do not do well on the ground in terms of the defense, if the Raiders defense does not successfully stop the run, more so than normal, and more so than other teams, if the Raiders defense does not stop the run, because it is such a strength of theirs, if they don't stop the run, they are going to be in trouble. So they have to lock in against Jonathan Taylor in the Colts, who's, listen, he can go off at any given time. So they have to make them one-dimensional as much as Daniel Jones and as well as he's been playing, this season. You would much rather put the ball in his hands than a talented running back. So you definitely want to make them as one-dimensional as possible. But let's be real about what the Raiders are walking into in terms of the Colts. The Colts are top 5 in scoring offense. They're averaging about 30 points a game. Colts are top 8. Their offense is in rushing, and the Colts offense is top 5 in total yards per game. So understand that Colts offense has been, for real, only been 4 games, small sample size. There's only so much you can tell from stats, but you can definitely tell what they are good at and what they're not necessarily good at off of 4 games worth of stats. The Colts defense, I believe they rank 12th in passing yards allowed per game. They allow, ironically enough, the 12th fewest rushing yards per game. So Raiders, offense, they're going to have the work cut out for them to, get that ground game going, but it won't be impossible. And then the Colts defense also, they rank 11th in scoring defense. So really, all in all, the Raiders have a tough, tough battle on their hands. But I've said it all along. There's not one game that I think they cannot win outside of one of the two Kansas City games. I don't see them sweeping Kansas City, the Chiefs. Sorry. But other than that, I don't think there's any game that they just have zero chance in. But I'm also banking on them performing to their capabilities when I say that. You can't give up a 60-yard kickoff return to start the game. You can't give up a 60-yard run like they did against the Commanders. You can't throw 3 interceptions. Through 4 games, we're watching a lot of the Las Vegas Raiders beating the Las Vegas Raiders. And that has to change. That has to change. Maybe, today against the Colts that will, but the Raiders have to figure out the Raiders. If you notice, even on this podcast, 95% of what we've talked about and what I've talked about here has been Raiders, focused, because a lot of it does center around them. It really doesn't matter what the other team does if you're giving them the ball 3 times in a game. What do you mean? Like, what do they need to do? You're giving them extra 3 possessions, right? Or you're letting them start their drive from your 40-yard line or your 30-yard line. That's not the other team. That's a you issue. You have to fix that. It'll be interesting to see where the Raiders go from here, but they got to do something. They have to do something now. You can't make this out to be any more than what it is. You can't dress it up to be any better than it is. 1-4 would be not good. 1-4 is not good. There's almost no coming back from 1-4. You go 1-4, go, it's going to be tough, right? You got to think about who they have over the next couple of weeks. It's Colts, it's Titans, and then I want to say it's Chiefs on the road after that. So, 2 of the next 3 games are on the road against challenging teams, right? So, and then the Titans, like I said, the Titans coming into town, but in between those 2 away games, and who knows how the Colts game is going to turn out, but you gotta find some wins, right? When you lose a game like you lost to Chicago, a game that you should have won, now you have to go start looking for games that you can win that you may not should win. Maybe you shouldn't win the Chiefs game, but at 1-4 or whatever it may be, you might have to, right? 1-5, if it gets to that point, you might have to. So a lot of different possibilities. I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but they got to figure it out, man. They got to figure it out. There's only so many ways you can say that in a positive way. They have to figure it out before this thing gets out of hand. And I think they can. Whether or not they do, time will tell. So as always, guys, thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed your time with me today. I love doing these podcasts. Hopefully I can continue to grow in this position on this podcast. So again, love doing this, man. I'll see you guys next week.